Welcome to Compelling Conversation. I'm Dush Ramachandran, your host, and I'd like to introduce you to a very special guest of mine today, Barry Mack, who is a wonderful artist and also a coach. Welcome, Barry.
Hey, thank you, Dush. It's great to be here, and thanks for that nice introduction.
Wonderful. So, first of all, you've done some amazing pieces of art, and we'll talk about that. But going from being an artist to coaching people on falling in love with the rest of their lives or their future is perhaps something you could consider to be a little bit of a shift. How did you make that shift and why?
Yeah, it's a huge shift, actually, and it's a great question. I made that shift because I discovered that I love doing it. Basically, that's the short answer to your question. I discovered that I love doing it. It's something I've been interested in. Affirmations, how we change our habits, how we change our mindset, those kind of things. It's something I've studied my entire life, and I've seen it produce amazing results in my life. So at this point, I started offering it, and I started working with a few people, and I realized that I love it as much as painting. I love it as much as creating art. Seeing people get results, it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, I imagine it would be. And so how long have you been doing this, the coaching?
Let's say 6 to 7 years now.
Oh, wow. Amazing. And when did you start on your art career?
I went professional in 2001, roughly. I don't recall, but I think it's because it blended so seamlessly with my, I've been painting my entire life. It's what I do. It's what I love to do. So I think it was around 2003, roughly in there. I was at a job and I was thinking, when I get to the end of my life, am I going to wish that I would have gone for it professionally and really done what I love to do? And I thought, I never want to be in that situation where I look back and wish that I would have done something. So I walked away from a good job, started my life as a painter, professional painter. I've been painting my entire life, but yeah, starting it as a profession was a big jump, and
I can imagine.
Yeah.
What's interesting also is that a lot of people go through life, wanting to do something, having a passion for something, but being trapped in a job or a career that they don't much enjoy, they don't much care for, but persist because they're too afraid to take the jump.
Yes.
And you've made the jump, which is truly inspirational to a lot of people, I'm sure. And so before we dive into the art itself, let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about how you actually made that shift. What was it? Was it an epiphany one day that came to you that said, I ought to be doing this, I ought to be doing art professionally, or was it a gradual process?
It was a gradual process, and it is an interesting story. I was working on making fine art books at the time, and I had just made a book of my art. And I knew there was a show in downtown Portland with an artist that I really admired, looked up to, and I just had this wild idea. And this is what I think is the essential key to this conversation, and really the answer to your question is, I thought, why don't I go down and show him my art? Which on the surface of it is a crazy idea, right? This guy is world famous, very successful guy. Why would he be interested in showing? So I had that idea. And here's what I'd like anybody who's listening to this to really take to heart is, no matter how crazy it might sound, if you feel strongly about it, or if you feel like it's important to you, do it. Don't let any self-doubt or anybody tell you, oh, that's a crazy idea, or that'll never work out, or anything like that. I actually, looking back on it, it's amazing because it was a pretty crazy idea.
I'll bet.
So I took my art down to this great gallery. Didn't really get to show my art to the artist because there was a million people in line, right, waiting to talk to him. But the director of the gallery happened to see the book, and she said, "Hey, what have you got there?" Who knew, right? I mean, it was a total, what you know, what would you call that? I mean, it's a, so I said, wow, this is my art. And she loved it and came out to my studio, and they invited me to show at the gallery. And it was a major gallery, and my life just took off from there. So, you know, things may not turn out the way that you think or hope that they might, but they might actually be better.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
by being bold and taking those kind of steps. So.
You know, this is really interesting because one of my previous interviews was with Christian Bush, who is an author. He's a researcher and he's a professor at NYU. And he's a researcher. And he's written a book called The Serendipity Effect, which basically talks about how people make their own luck. You know, you can make your own luck as long as you're tuned in to opportunities for serendipity. It looks like, you know, you just stumbled into something, but really what you were doing in that situation is you took action, because most people, exactly as you said, would have talked themselves out of it. They would have said, oh, you know, I'm passionate about art. I've created this, you know, all this art, but, you know, why is a famous painter going to be interested in me? Or even if I take it down, why would the gallery director want to look at this? I'm sure he's got famous artists. You know, space on gallery walls is limited. There's only so many paintings, so many pieces of art that they can show. Why would they be interested in somebody like me? And that's exactly the point. You took the chance and it paid off. That is absolutely amazing. And that is, you might think that's totally serendipitous, completely accidental. It's not. You made it happen. And Christian actually tells a story, which I think you'll enjoy. In a research study in London, they researchers at a university wanted to look into serendipity. And so they organized a situation where they reached out to people and who considered themselves unlucky and people who considered themselves lucky. So they picked one person who thought he was unlucky and one person who thought he was lucky. And the story is in my interview with Christian Bush. It's really fun. But basically, the idea was they set up this scenario where they asked both of these people, individuals, to go to a coffee house, get a coffee, find a place to sit. And they placed a £5 note just outside the entrance to the coffee house. So the unlucky person, the person who considered himself unlucky, went at the appointed time, and they placed within the coffee house. It was packed. There was only one seat vacant. It was at a table next to a very successful business person. So the person who considered himself unlucky went to the coffee house, stepped right over the £5 note, walked in, ordered a coffee, sat down, and, you know, didn't make conversation, had his coffee and left. The lucky person, the person who considered himself lucky, as he was walking to the coffee house, saw the £5 note, picked it up, put it in his pocket, and thought, that's cool. That's a nice sign for the day. Went into the coffee shop, got himself a coffee, found the only seat next to the businessman, sat down, and started a conversation. And before long, it came to a point where they were finding common things amongst themselves, and a potential business opportunity came up, which just goes to show that both these people, the person who considered himself lucky and the person who considered himself unlucky, had exactly the same circumstances, but one made something out of it and the other didn't. And your example is pretty much reinforcement of the exact same idea.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's a great story. One of the things that I think is worth highlighting, that's, I think, a really important idea that I personally believe, and I'm sure you do too, is that the universe is actually working with us. And I think that's probably a stretch for a lot of people, but I've come to believe it because of my experiences. And this particular instance that we're talking about is a perfect example. I didn't really have in mind showing my art to the director. It was completely serendipitous that she approached me and said, "What have you got there?" I mean, what are the odds that she would ask me about that book? That didn't even occur to me
Right.
that she would ask me about the book.
Yeah. That is
No,
fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. And ever since then, you've made your own luck, and look at where you are now. This is amazing.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
right. Okay. Let's dive into the art.
sure.
So the first piece you have is one called Awakening,
Mhm.
and that's mixed media on canvas. So tell
Right.
us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I painted that around 2005, and uh, it's an unusual painting in the sense that I don't recall painting much of it. I was in kind of a what you call a trance, or
A
these
fugue
days,
state.
I think I might have channeled it. I don't know, but I sat down at the easel, blank canvas. It's a huge painting. If you can imagine, 72 inches, about 6 feet high,
Oh yeah.
4 feet wide. I sat in front of this blank canvas, and I had no idea what I was going to create. I just started painting. And I painted nonstop for 2 days, and it was finished. I was like, wow, I had no idea, what was coming out of me. And it, uh, it struck me, and this is my interpretation, and a lot of times other people have their own interpretation that's equally valid or even more amazing than my own interpretation, right?
Sure.
So I'm just going to share with you my take on it. It looks like I don't know. Can you put it up on the screen for just a minute, or do we have?
I'm going to edit it into the video.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What you'll see, it's a fairly dark painting, and there's a reason for that. Uh, I think that it's a painting of a time that we're going through on a global scale. And it depicts a globe rising up out of kind of a fiery environment at the bottom, with it looks like maybe an angelic or a ghost figure on one side, kind of overseeing it,
Mhm.
with waterfall and this vast canyon up at the top with a sunrise and a mountain off in the distance. And to me, personally, this is my interpretation. I think it's a great representation of what we're going through globally. I think Earth is ascending. They were going through a rough time right now, but we are going toward the dawn, toward the light, toward a new day. And I believe that the title Awakening is because a lot of people these days are awakening to our, what you could call higher potential, our superconscious self, that kind of thing. So that's what it's about.
Beautiful. And it is a really striking painting. Now, did you end up selling the painting, or is it being shown somewhere?
It's in a private collection right now. I almost sold it. A couple fell in love with it, and they said they'd like to own it. They went back to their house, and it turned out to be an inch too big for
Oh,
their space. So I ended up holding on to the painting, and someday somebody will. But right now, it's in a collection that um, I'm proud of. So
nice.
it's
That's
got a good.
wonderful. Beautiful. And then the next piece is Woman Ascending. That's also mixed media on canvas.
Yeah. Okay. That piece, and again, is my interpretation. It obviously the figure looks like a woman. It's an abstract painting because that's what I do in general, but it has a very, to me, feminine feel in the figure,
Good.
and reminded me of a woman ascending. And I titled it that because I think it's a recognition of the amazing uh, value and contribution that women are making in today's world. I think
Absolutely.
that women and their role in the world is ascending. I think they're contributing uh, a huge role in the turnaround of changing the mostly patriarchal society into a more
Absolutely.
balanced, fair, humane society that's more caring about the environment, more caring about social justice and that kind of thing. So to me, it's an iconic painting and it represents that.
Beautiful. Yeah, it is. It is a gorgeous piece of work.
Mhm.
So we'll come to the last piece in just a second. Um, Currently, as we've all experienced, we're going through a fairly difficult time in the world. There's civil unrest. There's the ugly head of racial injustice has reared again,
Yeah,
and we're seeing it laid bare. Uh,
yeah,
it wasn't like it ever went away, but it's been there, but we're seeing it for what it is, in stark contrast right now. Um, and, there's the pandemic that's caused people to lose their livelihoods. Many people have lost their lives. It's in the US now, it's 200,000 people and counting. All over the world, the numbers are increasing. And so it's what you could consider to be a bleak time. And, the entire world seems to be kind of being dragged in opposite directions. There are forces of unity, forces of nationalism. They're, tearing, races and people apart.
mhm.
In this time, you've got some really inspirational thoughts to share. Um, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on what we can do to stay inspired. And
Yeah,
then we'll go to the painting itself.
yeah, thanks, Dush. I think that's a really important question for everybody to ask themselves on a daily basis. And I think it begins obviously with ourselves, all of the usual things to stay inspired. We need to stay fit, eat right, blah, blah, blah. Contributing in some way, either through some kind of a charitable service or whatever, is important. But I think more than anything is our attitude. And by that I mean, and I don't mean to at all uh, undermine or diminish the kind of suffering that people are going through. I know it's real, I know it's traumatic, and I would never expect anybody to just cheer up in the face of what's going on. It's very difficult challenges. Still, uh, I think it remains true and always will that back to your story about the person who thought they were lucky, what we believe about ourselves and what we believe about our world has a huge effect on our lives. And the more all of us can be positive and keep our eye on a more unified vision, I think it will help us stay inspired and get through these tough times. And I think you could call it almost a declaration in a way. It's like saying, this won't get us down. We will create a better world. That kind of thing.
I think that's a really good point that you make. Um, Said another way, you could say we create our own reality in
Yeah,
many ways.
yeah,
If we choose to believe, just like the person who believed that he was lucky,
yeah,
and created his luck around him, and the person who believed he was unlucky, when asked later on about his day, he said, nothing happened as usual. I
yeah,
went to the coffee shop, had a coffee, and the place was busy. So I didn't really find a good place to sit. There was just one place, and I had to share it with another person. That was it. So it was a complete nothing, right? It was an innocuous meeting or
yeah,
innocuous event. And so we create our own reality, and I think you make a really good point. So let's talk about the last piece, stay inspired. Um, how did you come to paint this piece? And that's mixed media on canvas as well. How did you come to paint this piece? What was your inspiration? And how do you talk us through the painting, if you would?
yeah. It's by mixed medium. It's a combination of photography, painting, and digital work on with Photoshop. Uh, I enjoy photography and I photograph my paintings. And through Photoshop, I combine photographs and photographs of paintings, combine the two, and that's the direction that I've been going lately. I haven't stopped painting, but I've found working with a laptop to be enabling in the sense that I can work anywhere if I don't have a big studio or something like that. So I'm always creating, always producing something. And of course, stay inspired is in keeping with my general uh, outlook or belief that it's important to stay inspired. And I do want to add that, you know, I think that it's very easy to say, well, staying inspired, that's great. You know, if you're white and you have a lot of opportunity and you've had the right education, or if you had good parents, or any number of things, you know,
Right.
because there are a lot of people in the world that don't have the kind of opportunities that exist for people in what I consider an unjust culture. It's an unfair culture. It's weighted toward uh, you know what I mean. I don't
Yep,
need to explain
absolutely.
it. It's a socially unjust culture. So you know, I get that perspective, and what I want to share is some discoveries that I've made from a lifetime. And obviously, you know, I'm not 20 anymore. I've been studying this since I was 20. And inevitably, Dush, what I've discovered from reading biographies and things like that is, I know this may be hard to believe or even accept sometimes, but even brought up in the worst of circumstances, people can create an amazing life.
Sure.
And I could come up with countless examples, but you know what I'm talking about. I mean, one that comes to mind is one of my favorite heroes is Beethoven. You
Sure.
know, he was raised with a father who beat him on a regular basis, and he had to take care of his family. It goes on and on. That's just one of endless instances of somebody who did not succumb to what could be daunting circumstances. You know, and Mandela, there's a great case. My
Yeah,
God,
absolutely. Nelson Mandela is a perfect
yeah,
example.
that isn't the ultimate case.
Yeah.
You know, there's a great book out recently by, I forget her name, you can look it up. I think it's called Superhuman or something like that. The whole book, she's a psychologist, and I apologize for not remembering her name, but it's the story of people who have overcome uh, really difficult, challenging childhoods, you
Hmm.
know, abuse or poverty or whatever, and they've gone on to create amazing lives. So this idea that we're talking about, I know that it's real.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, so many people have shown us the way.
Yeah,
Nelson Mandela is a great example.
yeah.
Um, and there's even a great story when Nelson Mandela later became president of South Africa. He and his entourage were eating at a restaurant,
Mhm.
and there was a gentleman who was also eating, but when he saw Nelson Mandela come in, he hurried to leave. And so Mandela said to one of his people, he said, "Go ask that person to come sit with us because he seems to be, you know, feeling like he shouldn't be in the restaurant when we're here. Have him come join us."
Mhm.
And so when that person came over and joined them, um, you know, and they started having their meal, the other person started crying. The person that Nelson Mandela invited to his table,
Mhm.
and he was sobbing uncontrollably. Um, and so anyway, he was calmed down and he finished his meal, and they all
Mhm.
went on. And somebody asked Nelson Mandela, he said, there seemed to be some connection between the two of you. Um, and why was that man crying? So he said, well, when I was imprisoned for all those many years by the apartheid regime, he was one of the jailers. He was one of the jail guards.
Oh
And,
my God.
and when I used to ask for food or water, he used to beat me. And
Oh my God, that's an amazing story,
you can
dude.
imagine? And he used to beat me. And, he would deny me food and he would, but then he said, my God. And the other person said, good God, now in that circumstance, you meet the person again. Is there no bitterness? Is there no anger towards him? He said, well, what does that serve? I want to show by example. I mean, just talking is not enough. I want to show by example that,
Wow.
I bear no ill will, and I've forgiven him, and he shouldn't have to run out of the restaurant because I'm eating here. Let's have him come join us. And
Wow.
that was an incredibly powerful message.
Gosh, that gave me goosebumps. It kind of choked me up. Man, that's one of the most powerful stories I've ever heard.
It
So thank
is, it
you.
is, and it moved me so much to hear that story.
Wow.
Um, Yeah, absolutely. So Barry, tell us a little bit about Stay Inspired, the actual art piece. Uh,
Yeah.
what
Uh,
describe it?
well, if you look at it, it has some beach umbrellas and things like that. It's kind of embedded into the abstract piece itself. It's kind of hard to see. I like to keep my work mostly abstract so that it's open to the viewer's imagination.
An interpretation. Yeah,
And what I'd like to share is my journey to the East Coast, living in the Hamptons and being exposed to, an amazing partner and a beautiful environment. We made daily trips to the beach, and that really transformed I've never really articulated this before, so just bear with me while I find the right words. It transformed my aesthetic approach, I'll say.
sure.
Instead of painting fairly what I would call Northwest colors, which is
Yeah.
where I painted most of my career. They're earth tones,
Hmm.
a lot of chiaroscuro, fairly, I think if you look at Awakening and Woman Ascending, they're kind of dark, right?
Yeah,
But going to the East Coast and being exposed to the beautiful light over there, it's a legendary light. The quality of light is just amazing. It
yeah.
really changed who I am and how I paint. And uh, I started painting brighter art, and I realized that it coincided perfectly with I guess what you could call my coaching platform to stay inspired.
Sure. Wonderful. And it's a gorgeous picture, and I'm
I,
so grateful that you've shared your three pieces with us. And I'm sure our viewers will love to enjoy these pieces while you're narrating and describing it. It's almost like watching a movie with the director sitting next to you, explaining each shot. You
yeah,
know, why he
well,
chose that particular
it
lens, and
makes a huge difference to have. I really appreciate your questions because if you know where the artist is coming from or what they're shooting for, it does make a difference in how you see the art. And this has happened.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Well,
uh, we all wish we could have had Rembrandt walk us through his art.
oh my God, wouldn't that be amazing?
Wouldn't that be amazing? We would love to have had Renoir explain his paintings.
Yeah,
But then sadly, that's lost to history. Uh,
yeah.
but we have the good fortune of having you with us, being able to guide us through your art, and that's truly a blessing.
Thank you.
This has been spectacular. Barry, thank you so much for your time.
My
We,
pleasure.
I love our conversation, and this has been tremendous. Thank you so much for sharing the beauty of your art and your thoughts and your ideas. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
My pleasure, Dush. Hope to see you soon.
Yep, absolutely. We'll talk soon.
All right.